The envelope was certified, return address in her mother's sharp handwriting. Margaret Whitmore. The 6 sentences inside began. Stop calling. Stop visiting. Except you are not part of this family.
2 calls in 12 months. That was how often Karen had spoken to her mother. The letter was theatrical, designed to perform righteousness for someone else's benefit. Then her memory sharpened. The Whitmore HELOC file, flagged on her desk for renewal next week.
$480,000. Secured by the lake house her brother Joseph planned to inherit. Karen was the senior vice president who signed off on that credit line.
Let Margaret send her cease and desist. Karen already had the reply drafted in her head.
She folded the letter, slid it back into its envelope, and placed it on the edge of her desk. The next business day, she would handle the situation with cold precision. The hold was already forming. At 7:45 the next morning, Karen Whitmore walked through the bank's glass doors, a single manila folder tucked under her arm. She didn't stop at her own office. She went straight to Claire Donovan's desk at the end of the credit review floor.
I need you to take over the Whitmore HELOC renewal. I am recusing myself, effective immediately.
Recusing? That file has your signature on it from last year. What's changed?
The Whitmore connection makes me a liability. I can't be the one signing off on their renewal.
Claire glanced at the recusal form. Karen had already signed. The box for conflict of interest was checked in blue ink.
You realize if there's anything irregular in here, I'll flag it. No exceptions.
I am counting on it. Do what you do best.
Karen turned and walked away, the click of her heels precise against the marble floor. Behind her, Claire Donovan pulled the file toward her like a prosecutor opening a case. The review had officially begun. Claire Donovan spent the next 3 hours with that file. She pulled property records, tax assessments, and a full lien search on the lake house. 2 undisclosed liens surfaced. One was a mechanic's lien for an unpaid dock renovation. The other, a judgment lien from a lawsuit Margaret Whitmore had settled quietly.
These liens didn't exist in the original underwriting. That's a material omission.
The email she sent to Karen was 2 lines. We have a problem. 2 liens never declared.
She'd found the buried liens much faster than expected. Good. Claire, follow standard protocol. No shortcuts. This file goes through compliance exactly like any other would.
Understood. I'll freeze the renewal and notify the applicants immediately.
The stall notice was generated within the hour. A 1-page letter stating the HELOC renewal was suspended, pending clarification of undisclosed encumbrances.
Margaret would receive that letter soon. The same woman who demanded no contact would now have to reach out.
But the call didn't matter yet. The machine was in motion, and Karen had no intention of stepping in front of it. The bank's envelope arrived mid-morning. Margaret sliced it open with a kitchen knife, her hands already unsteady. The notice read, HELOC renewal suspended. 2 undisclosed liens require immediate clarification.
Those liens were settled quietly, years ago. How could the bank have uncovered them?
She didn't call the bank. She dialed the number she'd written into that cease contact letter. In Karen's apartment, the phone buzzed on the counter. The caller ID read, Mom, in stale block letters.
Hello, Margaret. I thought you said no calling.
Don't be clever. The HELOC is frozen, and I know you are behind it.
You told me to stop contacting you. I am simply honoring your written request. Any further communication must go through the bank in writing. Goodbye, Margaret.
She ended the call. Across town, Margaret lowered the phone, her face pale and her breathing shallow. Karen set the phone down and let the silence settle. Then she crossed to her desk, where the original letter still waited. She retrieved the certified mailer and a neon green sticky note from her stationery drawer. In elegant, unhurried script, she wrote 5 words, per your written request.
If language is a weapon, Margaret had handed her the ammunition herself.
She pressed the sticky note onto the folded letter and slipped both into a fresh envelope. She addressed it to Margaret Whitmore, sealed it, and stepped into the hallway, The building's brass mailbox slot glinted in the low evening light as she approached. She held the envelope for a beat, then released it into the darkness behind the slot.
There. The same mail that had carried Margaret's decree now carried its consequence.
She walked back to her apartment without looking back. The letter was out of her hands, and soon it would be in Margaret's. 2 days later, a plain envelope arrived. Margaret recognized her daughter's handwriting even before she opened it. She tore the envelope open. The certified letter fell onto the counter, a neon green sticky note pressed against it. The note read, "Per your written request."
She returned my letter, the one demanding she stop calling. This isn't compliance. It's mockery.
Rage tightened her jaw. She grabbed the cordless phone from its base.
Fine. If Karen wants a war, I'll go straight to the bank manager.
Her other hand snatched the stall notice. She found the manager's direct number at the bottom. She punched each digit, the plastic keys clicking like small verdicts.
When I am through, Karen won't just be out of the family. She'll be out of a job.
The line connected. A crisp voice answered. Margaret demanded to speak with the head of credit review. The receptionist transferred Margaret to the private line of the senior vice president. In her office, Karen watched the internal line indicator flash twice before she picked up.
Credit review, Karen Whitmore speaking.
The name stopped Margaret mid-sentence. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out.
Karen, you are the manager? The one who froze my line of credit?
I am the senior vice president who recused herself from your renewal. Yes, I can't discuss the file. Per policy.
All this time, she was the one holding the signatures. The power was never mine.
The call recording light glowed red on Karen's monitor. Every word was being logged.
Any concerns about the ELOC must go through the compliance officer assigned to your case. That is standard procedure.
Margaret gripped the phone, her entire strategy collapsing into silence. She had walked directly into her daughter's professional cage.
Your HELOC renewal flagged 2 undisclosed liens. Until those are cleared, the bank cannot proceed.
You know those liens were settled years ago. This is retaliation for the letter, plain and simple.
I have no control over the compliance review. I recused myself weeks ago. The process is entirely independent.
The wedding is in 3 weeks. Joseph needs the lake house. You are doing this to punish me. Admit it.
I am not doing anything. The system follows standard protocol. Any flagged item triggers an automatic stall.
Then override it. You are the senior vice president. Just sign the renewal.
I cannot and will not. This call is recorded, and I won't violate internal policy.
She has me trapped in her own rulebook. There's no way out. You are dead to me, Karen. You really are.
The line went dead. In her office, Karen set down the receiver without a flicker of emotion. Margaret sat at her kitchen table, hands trembling. She picked up the phone and dialed Joseph.
Joseph, it's Karen. She's the bank manager. The one who froze the loan. She's the senior VP.
You are joking. Karen. Our Karen is the relationship manager who signs off on our HELOC.
She recused herself. It means she's untouchable, but the freeze is her doing. The wedding is in 3 weeks.
I am calling her right now. She can't ignore me.
Karen's car Bluetooth picked up the call as she merged onto the expressway.
Karen, I just talked to Mom. You are the bank manager. You are ruining my wedding for a damn letter.
There are 2 undisclosed liens, Joseph. The system flagged them. I am recused. I can't fix it.
You could push it through. You are senior VP. This is petty, Karen. Drop it.
Goodbye, Joseph.
The next morning, Claire Donovan walked into Karen's office with a file that felt heavier than the others.
The liens aren't just undeclared. The releases might be forged. The signatures don't match county records.
Fraud meant the HELOC could be revoked outright. The family would lose the house and face legal exposure.
Do you want me to escalate to the fraud investigation unit?
Number. Maintain the hold. Follow protocol, but don't accelerate anything.
Understood. But if this is fraud, It won't stay quiet.
They'd buried the liens to hide the lawsuit. They dug this hole themselves.
Karen returned to her monitor, while the file stayed frozen on Claire's desk. Margaret's exposure multiplied by the day. Her signature was on the falsified documents.
The system would demand an answer soon. She had no reason to provide one.
Late that night, a new message appeared in Karen's work inbox. The sender was Margaret Whitmore. The subject line read, "Please forgive me." The body began, "I made a mistake. The letter was performative, not meant for you. I'll do anything to make this right."
That word, performative, arrived only after the financial consequences landed.
Karen hit print. The machine hummed in the quiet apartment, and a single page slid into the tray. She retrieved it and placed it beside the certified letter on her desk.
One document demanded she vanish. The other begged her to stay.
She read the email a second time, this time underlining the words, "I'll do anything."
The definition of performative, a script rewritten the moment the stage collapsed.
She filed both pages in a folder labeled Whitmore Contradictions and closed it with a soft snap.
Evidence had a way of distilling truth. She would keep both documents until the right moment.
Mom, the venue deposit is due in 2 days. If the HELOC isn't released, we lose the lake house and the entire wedding.
Margaret spent the next morning on the phone, calling every lender she could find. 3 banks rejected the application within the hour. The undisclosed liens had followed the property like a stain. The wedding coordinator's voice on the voicemail was polite but firm. No venue payment, no wedding.
We're going to lose the deposit and the house. Can't you fix this? You started it with that letter.
Only one person could release the credit line, and I had demanded she never contact me again.
She picked up the torn pieces of the certified letter from the table, proof of her own command.
I have to go to her. It's the only way.
She drove to Karen's apartment complex, the torn letter fragments clutched in her hand on the steering wheel.
She had no apology prepared, no leverage, just the wreckage of her own words and a desperate hope.
Margaret stepped out of the car and walked toward the apartment entrance. The torn letter fragments pressed against her palm. The elevator ride felt longer than it was. She watched her own reflection, stiff and pale. The corridor on the 7th floor stretched wide and silent. Margaret's heels tapped the floor like a countdown. Inside the apartment, Karen paused. Footsteps, hesitant but close. Someone was approaching her door.
The peephole distorted Margaret's face, but the clenched jaw and desperate eyes were unmistakable.
Karen smoothed the front of her shirt, turned the deadbolt, and opened the door wide.
I need to talk.
I can see that.
She didn't step aside. She waited, the silence pressing harder than any question. Margaret stood on the threshold, clutching the torn pieces of her own demand, and realized there was no performance left to give. Karen stepped back and gestured toward the sofa. Margaret crossed the threshold like a woman entering a courtroom.
Tea?
Margaret nodded, unable to refuse. Karen poured from a ceramic pot and set the cup on the low table between them.
The letter was a mistake. I was swept up in the wedding. Joseph was pressuring me, and I panicked.
Karen lifted her own cup, the warmth spreading through her fingers. She didn't interrupt.
I know I told you not to contact us. I was horrible. But your brother, his wedding, is ruined if the house goes.
Karen set her cup down gently. The clink of porcelain was the only answer.
I'll do anything. Just tell me what it will take.
Karen tilted her head, her expression impossible to read. The silence settled thicker than the steam rising from the tea. Margaret's tears fell openly now, smudging the powder on her cheeks. She had no more lines.
Please, I am begging you. Just tell me what to do. I can't lose everything.
Send that one in, writing too.
She was weaponizing my own words. The same phrase she had written on the sticky note, now spoken aloud.
Margaret froze, the command crashing against her like a physical blow. Her hands went still. Karen rose from the sofa, her movements slow and deliberate. As if this were any ordinary meeting, she walked to the door and held it open, her hand steady on the handle. Margaret stumbled to her feet, the torn pieces of the certified letter fluttering to the floor around her. She moved through the doorway without meeting Karen's eyes. The door closed with a soft click, the sound final as a period at the end of a sentence. In the corridor, Margaret stood paralyzed, the fragments of her own command still clutched in her hand. She did not move for a long time, the silence pressing in from every side. Karen leaned back against the closed door, her shoulders dropping as she released a slow breath. She pulled her phone from her pocket, thumb already swiping to the message thread with Claire Donovan, expedite Whitmore Helock. Leans cleared.
She could have sent this earlier. She'd needed to know Margaret would feel the weight of her own words.
At her desk, Claire Donovan read the message without surprise. Her fingers moved swiftly on the keyboard. Understood. Processing now. On her monitor, the Helock renewal document flashed with a bold red, approved stamp. The system had been waiting for this.
The Lake House venue deposit was already forfeit. The wedding would go on, but not in the place Joseph had planned.
Karen slipped the phone back into her pocket and walked to the window. Outside, the evening had turned a deep, indifferent blue.
The balance had shifted forever. She had nothing left to prove to anyone.
The wedding invitation arrived in mailboxes 3 days later with a small insert card. Venue change, Evergreen Community Center. Not the Lake House. The community center was clean but modest. Folding chairs, a floral arch that didn't quite hide the basketball hoops. Joseph walked his bride down the aisle, his smile pinned in place, but never reaching his eyes.
All my life, I waited to get married at the lake house, and she took it with a single phone call.
Margaret sat in the front row, her pearl earrings perfectly in place, but her face was hollow. She watched the ceremony like a woman who had already buried something, the performance she'd spent decades perfecting. Guests whispered among themselves. The lake house had been the talk of the family for a decade. Its absence was louder than any speech.
She didn't come. Not even to gloat. We're beneath her notice now.
Joseph raised a glass for the toast, his hand trembling almost imperceptibly. He thanked everyone for coming. He didn't thank his sister. There was an empty chair at the family table that no one mentioned, but everyone noticed. A few days after the wedding, Karen spent a quiet evening in her apartment, a worn paperback open across her lap. The only light came from a floor lamp, casting warm amber pools across the room. She glanced toward a small decorative box on the shelf, the place she'd stored the torn letter fragments.
Those words had arrived like a blade. Now they were just paper.
She lifted the lid, ran a finger along one jagged edge, then closed it again with a soft thud. The box went back on the shelf, not hidden, just stored. Outside her window, bare trees swayed gently against a deepening evening sky. She returned to her chair, lifted her teacup, and took a slow sip.
She'd spent years earning a life that didn't require their permission. The silence was her signature now.
Then she opened her book again, a faint, knowing smile settling on her lips. 3 months after the wedding, Karen Whitmore walked out of the bank building with a new briefcase and an even steadier stride. Her promotion to Vice President of Compliance had been announced without ceremony. The profile update was enough. As she turned the corner, she spotted a woman waiting at the crosswalk, shoulders held too straight, pearls catching the light.
Margaret's eyes caught hers for a half second, then dropped away. Not defiance, just retreat.
Karen didn't slow. She passed the crosswalk and walked through the bank's glass doors, the briefcase a steady pendulum.
She didn't look back. The street was filled with ordinary light, and her mother was no longer an obstacle.
Inside her office, the computer screen displayed the bank's internal directory. Karen Whitmore, Vice President Compliance. The corridor leading to her new department was quiet, the doors labeled for oversight, review, and enforcement. Outside her window, the city lights gleamed through the evening fog, distant and indifferent. She stood at the glass, her reflection faint against the skyline, a woman who had long stopped needing their approval. One Sunday morning, Karen drove the old road to the lake house. The for sale sign was staked into the lawn, tilted toward the water. She parked and walked to the dock, her shoes leaving faint prints in the dew.
They built this place as a legacy. It became a liability the moment they hid liabilities.
Through the window, she could see the mantel where the family portrait had hung, the one where her spot remained empty.
They erased me from the picture, and I rewrote the financials.
She ran her hand along the weathered railing, then turned away. The conversation was over. Back in the car, she didn't start the engine right away. She just looked at the house once.
No nostalgia, no anger. Just the clear, quiet truth that she'd built herself without them.
She started the car and pulled away, the gravel crunching under the tires. The lake house shrank in the rearview mirror, just another piece of someone else's history, finally left behind. A few days later, a thin envelope arrived at Karen's apartment. The handwriting slanted forward, urgent. Inside, a personal check for $50,000. It had been torn across the middle, then taped back together. A single note card read, "I am sorry."
The apology was as ragged as the paper, but the check would clear.
She opened her banking app, aligned the check, and photographed both sides. The screen refreshed. Deposit successful. $50,000.
This wasn't reconciliation. It was a transaction. And she knew exactly which account it belonged in.
She transferred the funds to a high-yield savings account, the one she'd been building for her own future. The torn check went into the decorative box alongside the letter fragments, another piece of paper that no longer held any power. Then she made herself tea and sat by the window, feeling nothing but the quiet satisfaction of a woman who had long ago taken control. Early the next morning, Karen stood at her window as sunlight poured across the floor in long golden strips. She turned her head, and the faint, knowing smile returned, the same one from the moment she'd first opened that letter. It wasn't triumph. It was the quiet certainty of someone who had already made the call and waited for the right moment to make it count. She owed nothing to anyone, not forgiveness, not explanation, not another minute of her peace. The city outside kept moving, but inside this room she was still, and that stillness had been earned over years of not being heard. In her eyes was the truth of someone who'd been told to disappear, and instead became indispensable. She didn't need to remind anyone. The evidence was everywhere they looked. On the shelf behind her, the box of torn letters stayed closed. A relic, not a wound. She lifted her teacup, took a sip, and turned back to the window, watching the morning stretch into day. Then the frame held her gaze, steady, unapologetic, and completely free until the screen faded slowly to black.